Guys, welcome back. BDCKR here. We're back with season 6, episode 47 of our weekly P&Q&C&A&T videos. That is a very long acronym that basically means Q&A, but we do some other stuff sometimes, and the important part is the P, which stands for podcast, which if you're currently watching this on the video on YouTube, you can access this in podcast format by clicking the links in the description to access this on all the major podcasting platforms, all like I think 4 of you or something who do it. It's I mean, the thing about it is it's not like we actually make any revenue from it.
Yeah.
So we're not actually disappointed that people don't particularly look at it in that format. I just think it's also funny. We probably don't need to push it particularly hard.
Right.
I think the people who want to watch it are probably already there.
And when you say 4 of you, many have asked, but few have chosen.
That's true. People have asked at different times. I think those people no longer consume our content, which
that might be true.
You know,
it's neither here nor there.
Yeah,
it is what it is.
That's all right.
I mean, we'd be doing
Hard
this
to blame them.
probably, in some form, whether it's for public consumption or not. So really, this is the Happy New Year's edition, which was originally supposed to be the Merry Christmas edition.
Yeah. So we've moved. I was gonna say we've moved away from a specific religion or culture in the holiday, but I guess New Year's is still sort of...
It's all pretty secular. It has less to do with religion, I think, than just the culture that celebrates
That's
this as
true.
being the New Year. So it's what calendar is this? The Gregorian calendar?
I think so. It's like I know it's definitely in North America, because I know like the Chinese New Year calendar is different and different calendar formats have it. So I guess this is still only New Year's for some people, but probably most of our audience, for sure.
Yeah, so that's what I mean. It's cultural but not religious. I think pretty much everybody in North America at least recognizes it, only because this is the world you live. It's like daylight savings time. You might hate, like I do. Actually, I don't hate daylight savings times. I hate shifting back and forth between regular and daylight savings times, and I think I probably like daylight savings time better.
Yeah.
But as much as I hate the idea of it, I still have to follow it because the world around me in our time zone shifts every twice a year.
And I know nobody has chosen New Year's as the hill to die on for saying happy holidays.
This is true.
Right?
Okay. That went a lot longer.
Weird, yeah, okay. Right. Strange start. First question comes from Stelier.
Oh, and I should mention, too, that this is... A lot of these questions are from a couple weeks ago, because we were originally trying to... we had these questions... Holidays got in the way, your sickness got in the way, and so we're coming back to it. You still sound, I mean, I still sound
a little sick.
Yeah, but you're a lot better now.
Yeah, and I guess this might be a weird one because I've had like no sleep schedule. Like I've been sleeping, I think almost the right amount, but just like in
chunks, in dribs and drabs,
in the weirdest times you could imagine.
Yeah.
So if that comes across in the video, I feel like it's already seeping in a little bit. We'll see how that goes. Enjoy, I guess. So the first question comes from Stelier, Stelier.
That sounds
seems right? Because this doesn't seem like a name. I might be wrong.
Yeah.
As always, let us know in the comments. But this seems like a sort of created thing, like based off of a word, like steelier than you, sort of.
Right.
Yeah. Anyways, their question is. My question is, what is the most overrated card in Team right now?
So, when I first heard this, I mean, it struck me. My first take on it, which was the wrong one, was that, well, there's very few characters that are overrated, mainly because characters suffer more from the opposite, being underrated.
Yeah.
Where people don't appreciate the potential of it, and so they don't play it. And when you don't play it, you don't really get a sense or get a feel. It's like Teen Titans Raven. When we didn't play it, I didn't really have an idea of just how good her Special 2 was, not because it had an effect, which it did, but because of how it was broken down so that it had a really good chance to do maximum damage to 2 characters instead of just 1.
And the thing about it, too, is it's hard for cards to be overrated when there's not a huge amount of discussion about them, right?
Right.
Because when you find them in online multiplayer, either a team is hard to face, in which case it's not overrated, and it is actually, the perfect team to put in, right? Because it's effective. Or it's pretty easy to face, and in that case you can't tell if people are putting it in because they think it's better than it is, or if that's just how the matchup, right, based off of the battle system.
And so when you're facing them, you don't overrate them.
Yeah, you don't overrate them, you don't underrate them, you barely register them.
I think that they're I guess, I don't know what it is. It's all meat. I mean, anyway, sorry.
Yeah, so this was initially a little bit hard to sort of figure out, because it seemed like it would be challenging to find anybody that was considered, a lot in the discussion.
And the fight we just saw was a perfect example of, I realized that the most overrated cards are the medals. Basically, all the medals except for Batman Ninja Catwoman. Because she is actually good. But I think if we ever do that play video with her in it, we can sort of demonstrate why. I mean, to some extent, you might even make the argument that she is a little bit overrated. But when you face her, though, the way the AI uses her and the way your teams are usually set up, she's not. Like, she really is as deadly as she seems. She's really worth the effort to accumulate that much nth metal and go through that many loot boxes hoping to get her. All the other medals, I mean, when you look at it, they might be fun to play like a lot of other characters, but to me, the appeal is in finding, if you're going to put in that much of your time, which is the most valuable thing in this game.
Yeah.
If you're going to spend that much time trying to accumulate them, in my mind, I think the only one worth your trouble is Batman Ninja Catwoman.
Yeah, the effort to quality of result is the lowest, I think, for medals. It's lower than any other content in the game. I don't think there's anything else that takes as much time for as little of a result, except for maybe augments, just for health and damage, for what they do proportionally.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and I'm glad you separated that, because in my mind, augmentations for crit chance and crit damage are sort of the most important.
Oh, exactly. Those are, like, spectacular and after a certain point necessary, right?
Yeah.
But I think health and damage are probably equally sort of grindy for not a ton of result, right? But I think other than that, metal is probably the next per unit time spent on it that gives you the least bang for your buck.
Right. So I think that's what makes it overrated, right? Because you can value it in different ways. You can value it by just saying, oh, they're really great, or you can value it by spending a lot of, and we say this a lot, there's a ton of currencies in the game, but I think the single most important currency that ties it all together is your time.
Yeah.
The time that you put in playing it, thinking about it, strategizing, all that stuff to accumulate whatever resource.
Yeah, you don't get a lot out of the medals for the time that you put in.
So here's the thing about Batman Ninja Catwoman, and if we ever get to the video, we can maybe expand on this a little bit more. So with her passive, so that based on tagging in, knocking out an opponent, doing a special 2, having that huge boost to her basic damage.
Yeah.
Is amazing. That she drains power when that happens is also amazing. Mm-hmm. The problem is that because of the way the game is shifted, when you try to play her as to her strength as a basic damage dealer, right? Like I think it would be a little bit silly to play her as a specialist, because sure, you could get her passive engaged more often the more often you do special 2. But then what you really want to do is take advantage of it by doing a huge amount of basic damage.
Mm-hmm.
And with the current meta being so reliant on specialists, right? That as good as she is as a basic damage dealer, I think before Tantu Totem came out, she would have been sort of the most important character to have. Rivaling, probably the only person close to him would be Flashpoint Batman.
That's probably true, because really Tantu Totem was totally necessary with all the special neutralization, right?
Yeah.
You couldn't actually rely on specials. It was becoming increasingly harder to rely on specials.
Right.
And then it totally flipped the game, where all of a sudden anything that neutralized it was good.
Right. And there's still a role for basic damage dealers, right? So when you've got guys who evade specials, and not just evade them, but will potentially come in and punish you for them, like Rebirth Wally West, Dawn of Justice Batman, where they hit you when you do a special.
Yeah.
And you have to block, or you'll take some damage. The basic damage dealer now has become sort of situational, and I guess there's still lots of situations where you can make somebody with as much damage output as Catwoman, Batman Ninja Catwoman, mm-hmm. to match it. But you really have to work for it, and it's nowhere near as easy as Tantu Totem.
Yeah, it just doesn't have the speed. It's not that it can't be a totally viable strategy. You can make a great basic damage dealer, and it's very hard for people to counter that, right?
Right.
There's not a lot of stuff that does just basic damage reduction without doing other stuff, right?
Right.
So but it's just not going to be as fast, and we value speed. And in most cases, even in the cases where you'll sometimes run into teams where you have to shift your strategy around because one character or more makes it a challenge to just use specials straight off, sort of with reckless abandon, it still makes a lot more sense to use that special team overall if you want to get through stuff faster.
Right.
Yeah.
So is there a team that I guess the metal team would really be it?
Yeah, metal team is probably the most overrated.
I mean, metal characters, metal team, with the exception. I mean, the only thing that would be difficult, again, the exception would be Batman and Catwoman. And if you stuck her with the Nightwing, the metal Nightwing, and maybe one other Batman Ninja character which would not be metal, that is not overrated because it really is as good as it looks because she gets revives from each of her the other characters. But, like New 52, Shazam, the Black Adam, the Joker Who Laughs, Batman Who Laughs. I get all mixed up because it is a Joker character. Because it is a Joker character, right?
Yeah.
They are overrated. I mean, they have high stats. They're not challenging to fight at all. I'm sure they're fine to fight with. I still don't like them. I don't like the Joker basic attack mechanic, and the dark power stuff doesn't add enough because it takes too long to build up to it. So I think that's it.
There we go.
Do you have anything else to say about that? I think that really hits the.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I don't think. I'm trying to think. I don't think there's going to be anything off the top of my head who's overrated, right?
Yeah.
I think there were other times when more stuff was going on. There was, I think, more times when people were overrated, which is whenever somebody came out who was new.
Yeah.
They tended to be mischaracterized or misjudged in one way or another. It was hard because they needed to settle in and people needed to figure out how to use them.
Speak of the devil, there's a Raven, an Elite 1 Raven on the opponent's team just now.
Yeah.
So she used to be, I mean, at one point, but she wasn't overrated. She really was that good. And there's a natural transition as newer characters come out. But people don't keep on thinking that, wow, the old character's still really good. I think the crowd that plays Injustice is pretty quick at figuring out when the meta shifts and changes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there we go. Our next question comes from Abid Him.
Abid?
ABID space HIM. Let us know in the comments if you want.
I feel like it should be Abid.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Abid Him. Okay. And they say, just a random question. Have y'all seen the new Frozen 2 movie that came out a couple of weeks ago? If so, what y'all think about it?
I have some thoughts. You want to start first?
Well, I mean, I think the first thing we can say is, no, we haven't seen the new one yet. I've seen, like, moments of it, right? Just, like, not, like screenshots and stuff. And I haven't actually looked at any reviews for it yet. There's been a lot of talk about new movies recently with me. The things that I've heard a lot of stuff that I should go see apparently, and none of it I have. I've been specifically recommended Knives Out. It's supposed to be really good.
Oh, yeah, I recommend that to you.
Yeah, I've been recommended by like 4 different people though at this point.
Okay, so we could talk about that too. A bunch of
And
recommendations.
I've heard the new Star Wars movie is not that good.
You know what? I think the comments I've read... Okay, so here's my problem with the Star Wars. Oh, man, we touched on so many things that I wasn't planning on it. The thing about Star Wars is I grew up with the middle trilogy. The original trilogy was 4, 5, and 6. Mm-hmm. And the biggest problem was that when the New Hope came out, originally it wasn't even New Hope, it was just Star Wars. That was retconning. But it was completely different. It was completely different than anything I'd ever seen before. The special effects were amazing. When you compare it to other science fiction movies that were trying to do the same thing, they didn't put nearly as much... Well, maybe I shouldn't say they didn't put as much effort. It wasn't as obvious on the screen, the kind of effort the other people were putting on, because the visual effects were stunning, and you can only ever see that kind of stuff for the first time once. Yeah. And so there's lots of things about the story that you can overlook. I mean, even the best, which was, to me, was probably Empire Strikes Back, had a lot of sort of... It wasn't completely even in terms of quality. There were lots of great moments, but then the commentary I've heard about the Rise of Skywalker is that what it does is... Oh, John Scalzi had a great thing about this. So that he was talking about dynamic range. When you talk about music, what it does is it lowers the highest highs, raises the lowest lows, so that you don't have to worry about cranking down the volume when you're listening to something because it gets really loud, or cranking it up when it gets really quiet. Yeah. So that the emotional dynamic range of the movie was relatively flat. You're never going to get the really great highs and never the really great lows, but it's pretty good. Like, it's a fun kind of movie. It does a lot of things that the fans want. So it's a fan service kind of movie. Yeah. But what it does is it feels more like a ride where you're getting one place to another, to another, to another, and hitting the notes and tying everything together, instead of trying to tell a good... Or not trying to tell it, but just missing out on what would have been potentially a better story if you didn't have that kind of those tourist spots that you had to hit before you finished.
Yeah. And I think I have a maybe not super commonly held opinion on Star Wars, which is that the movies that people seem to like a lot and the movies that people hated on a lot, I'm talking more about the new stuff than what came before.
Right.
Because I think I was a little bit separated from the cultural context of what came before.
Right.
And I'm at the point that we were at when I was watching them with the visual effects, right?
Right.
They didn't hold up in the same way any longer. So I think in some ways it's unfair to judge it so far out of its time.
Right.
When a lot of what was valuable about it was within its time. And the sort of reason why they're still watchable now is the nostalgia and their part in history and a lot of other things that have sort of replaced the role that the special effects initially did.
And it's ongoing, right? Like if there weren't new installments of Star Wars, I don't think it'd be like one of those other movies that, you know, people's parents would tell them were really good. You see it and you'd enjoy it because that was something that you got to share with your parents or you saw it when you were really young and you were impressionable. The best line I heard was, you know, seeing Star Wars when you were like a young baby duck and fully imprinted on it, like it, you know, like, so this was your thing, right? But yeah, I think that's a common problem that parents fall into, where the thing that meant so much to them when they were young, they forget that part of it was because they were young and because of the cultural context.
Yeah.
And so they push it on their kids, hoping that their kids will have that same experience when there's so much going on now.
It's the environment surrounding the experience that actually ended up being more important than a lot of what was on the screen specifically.
Right.
Yeah, but getting back to how I feel about the new movies, is that I find most of them to be mostly mediocre, which is I don't ever feel like I've wasted my time watching them.
Right.
The ones that people hate, the ones that people said are pretty good, right? I'm just sort of all right with them.
Right.
And I think in a lot of ways, they feel very similar to what Marvel movies are to me now.
Ooh, right, because they're restricted the same way.
Yeah. So what I mean is that they're very visual effects focused.
Yes.
They're huge budget. So you've got like a super sort of, there's a ton of money behind it. They can do basically whatever they want with the visuals, right? And the sort of story is a little bit of the back burner. They're part of a big franchise, right?
Right.
They're sort of meant to build and maintain momentum.
Right.
But that also means that they are beholden to choices that other directors and people made.
Right.
You know, as recently as a year or two ago and as far back as, you know, a while ago.
Right.
And I think one of the big reasons you watch both of them, if you are not a big fan by yourself, is because they're a cultural moment. They're a thing that almost everybody watches. They're a thing you can talk about, and they are easy and inoffensive. And I think that's another sort of thing that ties into them, is that they don't have a lot of opportunity to do things big or new, or too out there, in a way that most of the movies that I really love end up doing some weird stuff, right? Just because they have so much money put behind them, and because of the way that they're positioned to be the thing that everybody wants to watch, instead of just capturing a specific market, they end up not being able to do stuff that's going to make them, you know, that's ever going to be able to make them my favorite movie of the year.
Right.
And I can't speak for other people because I know, you know, art is very subjective in how you enjoy it, right? Maybe you just want a good visual blockbuster. But to me, when you put all those things together, it means it's almost impossible to make a movie that I'm going to come out and say, that sucked, I really disliked it.
Right.
But it's also going to make it very, very difficult for me to go, oh, that was super, super cool.
Right. So the thing that you mentioned that really stuck with me was the part about how the Marvel movies, they were beholden to other directors' choices. And along those lines, there's like sort of the overarching thing where in the last Avengers movie, what was I finally watched? I can't remember the name. Endgame.
Endgame was actually... Endgame... Endgame was the last one.
Okay, so...
Infinity War and then Endgame. So Endgame was the exception. It did a lot of stuff that I didn't think a Marvel movie would do. With the tone and pacing and everything.
But what it had to do, though, because it was wrapping up this whole cycle, it was supposed to tie in all these other movies, that there were certain things that it couldn't get away from. So there were definitely some interesting moments, but I think they could have played them a little bit better. And I think that's the same thing with Star Wars. Star Wars may not be the finale, but it was in a lot of ways tying in together everything that happened in the previous 8 movies.
And I think there are definitely some obvious differences between them. And I think one of the really big differences that I think informs a lot of what makes them different from each other is their focus. And I think Star Wars is very universe focused.
Yeah.
And Marvel is very character focused. And when you look at Star Wars, you have a lot more people who do similar things to each other, right? It's not that you have superheroes. Yeah. It's not that they're differentiated. You have a class of people that all have around the same powers, right? It's the same sort of basic power set.
Right.
And you also spend a lot more time with the worlds, right? Mm-hmm. So you can... I think it would be very difficult, other than... I mean, you have stuff that's iconic like Wakanda in Marvel, right? But for a lot of the locations that you explore in a Marvel movie, I think you might not remember them the same way.
Well, and sometimes they're just analogs to real world locations.
Or they might not stand as well as their own. But I think in Star Wars they spend a lot of time with the worlds, right? When you have like Tatooine, when you have whatever the...
Yeah, I mean, that was perfect. Wakanda was really the only place that's meant to stand on its own, because what it's supposed to posit is the idea that there was an African nation that was able to remain sovereign and not colonized, which is not true in a lot of the
but there's not a lot of other standout locations. They don't spend as much time with them, and so you end up in Star Wars having what feels like a more grounded universe once you take the conceits,
right? And
you end up getting characters that have a lot more of a reliable sort of power set where you understand what people can do,
right.
Whereas you go into Marvel and even a single character over the course of the time that they spend in the movies, I think doesn't end up with what resembles coherent power set sometimes. Like Iron Man, by the time he got to the last movie where he was bringing out new configurations of the suit created by nanobots to come out for like a single attack, right? That's not a coherent idea of what the hero can do. And you don't have sort of that same sense of an overarching structure for why people can do what they can.
Right.
And you also don't have the same sense of exploration of the worlds. Like in Thor Ragnarok, right? They drop you into this big trash world, right?
Right.
And they give you just enough detail to sort of accept that it's maybe a place. And then they say, here, now look at this big battle arena and we're going to pull in the Hulk, right?
Right. But I mean, the part that stands out as sort of the response to that, though, is the whole midichlorians and the Force and stuff, how they were trying to play with the idea. It was, I think, better in the original trilogy, and then when they tried to explain it away with a science-y kind of explanation, I think they ruined it.
Oh yeah, but that's the explanation of it. I think at the end of the day, what we didn't need to hear was exactly why it worked, because there was never going to be a good explanation for exactly why Force powers work.
Yeah.
But what they do have is a sort of suite of powers that they try not to stray from too much, right? And I think that is a focus on building the universe out and building the sort of world more than what Marvel does, which is a lot heavier focus on building out the characters, right? So it's very sort of character driven, where I know obviously there are aspects of Star Wars, right, where you have a main set of characters, but I think the sort of overarching aesthetic is that of showcasing sort of the world that they're in, right? Where you spend a lot of time with the vehicles, right?
Right,
you spend a lot of time with the world, you spend a lot of time with the different races, right?
It's very much setting driven.
Yeah, there's a lot more sort of flavor text. It's like the halfway point to like Lord of the Rings, right? Where there are like the Silmarillion is just like a flavor text book, right? Where it's like a history book for like a fake world. Right? Where you can tell that the world is really, in a lot of ways, what the actual primary focus is in different parts of it.
And so when you have stories like that, the important thing is if they're good, the more successful they're likely to be is even if you focus on the one area, that the other parts are good enough.
Yeah.
They don't have to be great, but they need to be good enough.
Yeah.
And so I haven't seen the new Star Wars yet. I mean, I should be its target audience. I got to tell you, though, I hate going to theater enough. The idea that I have to go at their set time, sit and listen to 20 minutes of commercials or watch 20 minutes of commercials. I listen to them if I have my eyes closed. Yeah. So I watch 20 minutes of commercials, and then I can't pause it if I need to go to the bathroom. Yeah.
Yeah, for a movie that you've been told is enjoyable but nothing special. And I think our taste in movies is always going to be not what the huge big budget stuff is, right? Like a movie, I think for me, for an ideal movie, it needs to have just enough money that it can do the stuff that it wants to do, but probably not enough money in terms of budget that you really have the same sort of onus to produce something that's going to be super profitable for the studio, right? Like a movie like Memento, right? I think couldn't have been made with a massive budget. I think it's too weird.
So we don't even have to go to that far back. We already touched on one thing, Knives Out. And I want not much of a spoiler to say it's a murder mystery, but what it does really well is exactly what we say about, because it's not beholden to any idea. The expectations are pretty much zero.
Yeah.
It's not like a franchise or anything, although potentially could be with the detective that's in it.
Yeah.
What it does is it takes the murder mystery, it gives you a twist, but not necessarily in just, oh, haha, this is a different person than you expected who did it. It gives you, and this I'm going to phrase it in a way, hopefully that's not much of a spoiler, is that it takes your perspective on things so that it's not only just a different kind of story, it reveals itself to you in a different kind of way that makes it really interesting, so that you get that joy of discovery when things happen.
Yeah.
Which is what makes it so cool.
Sorry to Bother You, I think, is another one. I can't even speak about, what the actual oversight of the studio was, or what the actual budget was, right? But Sorry to Bother You strikes me as another movie that had at least somebody behind it who was willing to let the creative vision shine through, because it let it be, whoever was producing that, let it be really weird.
Okay, so yeah, it was only a little bit weird, and then that last act was bizarre.
Okay, no, Sorry to Bother You was weird all the way through. I don't know if you remember the same movie that one of the conceits of the movie is that they have a white voice where it's an entirely different actor doing voiceover.
But that's okay.
For
like I mean, that's really just sort of taking the audio effect to an extreme. Like, it's more like a special effect that stands out. Because
yeah, but that's weird. Well, what I'm saying is it's destabilizing.
I guess if it unnerves you, like it makes it be. I see your point, but it didn't bother me as much, mainly because the idea that it's more easy to sell to white people if you sound white over the phone is
totally logical.
I think that's totally rational.
I'm not saying I didn't like it. I thought it was perfect tonally. I thought it was really interesting and it was a cool thing to do. But I'm saying that is undeniably really weird.
But I guess it's in contrast to the end of it. To me, the end of it was absolutely ridiculously bizarre. Weird. It was bizarre.
Yeah, but it's good allegory, and it gives you good stuff to think. Like, I finished watching that movie saying that was a time I was super engaged the entire time. I don't know how much I liked it, and the further I've gotten away from that movie, I think the more I've liked it.
Okay.
Retroactively.
Yeah.
But it's stuff like that. Like, that stuff is always gonna have at least the opportunity to be a movie that I like way more than any sort of big visually focused blockbuster that is meant to appeal to almost everybody is going to.
So I should mention before we get to that point, because we're running low on this footage, and I think we probably want to go a little bit longer than we'd originally planned.
Maybe.
But this footage is recent. When this first series of Ultimates with this team runs out, I'm going to stick in some other footage after we finish talking, because there's a bunch of stuff. I didn't think this question would be so fertile.
Yeah.
Because it was originally about Frozen, and there's a bunch of stuff I want to say about Frozen. Well, yeah. Frozen 2. I haven't seen Frozen 2. I absolutely loved Frozen 1, the original.
Yeah. And
the reason why I loved it was what it did really well. There's this whole trope of instant romantic love. And it seems unrealistic. I mean, listen, you like the idea. It's kind of cool to have it on the screen and have it dramatized and stuff. But the idea that you can neglect longer term, longer lasting, more established relationships for this person that sort of just drops into your life, and this becomes so much more important than anything else that's been in your life before.
Yeah.
It bugs me a little bit. But what was great about Frozen, I hope this is not a spoiler, because I don't know what the moratorium on spoilers is.
Okay, spoiler alert for Frozen. Everybody's seen Frozen, and anybody who doesn't care enough about Frozen to want to see it.
So it feels like Frozen was for me at least, the biggest mainstream moment where it's acknowledged that your other relationships are really that much more important because of the strength of the bond, the depth of your connection to your not it is in this case it was the family, but not it doesn't even necessarily have to be.
Yeah.
But that declaration of love at the end basically is what it amounts to, right? When the magic
saves Anna.
Yeah.
But it's Elsa.
Right. So it's not really the point that the new person is necessarily a creep or wrong, but that the love in other relationships is also important, that it can be true love.
Yeah.
Right? And so this ties in.
I'm sure there has to be other acknowledgments of that in mainstream media, but I can't think of any.
Listen, it might just be, it's probably just a function of the fact that I don't get out enough. That this to me is like the turning point, but it feels
the
like
one that did it.
It's a lot of Disney movies, a lot of stuff that's geared towards kids seems to valorize romantic love way more than they should.
Yeah. And I think it's because it's a lot easier to.
Right. And okay, so this ties into something else that I've been recommending to you and I've been wanting to talk about. Right? I think I actually did talk about it last week, was Fleabag. And so in my mind, I feel like I've already talked about it. Maybe I have. But
you've talked about it so much in person that it's hard for me to remember if you've talked about it on the podcast.
I've been recommending it whenever I can, whenever there's anybody who's might even potentially be interested in it. And it's about this woman. You never know her name except she's called Fleabag as the title of the show. And Fleabag is slang, I guess, for somebody who's really not nice, like not a nice person. And I was making the mistake for a while of saying, well, she's sort of not sympathetic, but she is sympathetic, which is what's so amazing about this, is that she's really kind of not nice in a realistic way, but you can so sympathize with her and understand where she's coming from.
Yeah.
And I can understand what she does, but there's the one thing that happens, there's like a frozen moment, and I won't spoil it, but where it acknowledges in the same way, and I felt myself getting a little verklempt about it. Where verklempt, that's like
misty-eyed?
A little bit.
Okay, because I'm trying to infer from context, and I'm like, I don't. That's too Yiddish.
Like I had a lump in my throat.
Okay.
Where I was thinking, man, that is such a perfect moment, but it was earned. It wasn't one of those fake moments where there's like melodrama. It was totally earned. It came out of the blue a little bit, and it hit me kind of hard.
You know what moment I got what movie I got embarrassingly misty-eyed about for a moment recently?
What was that?
This is really bad. I was just super sleep deprived, but Elf almost got me for a second, and I don't even know. Good. I don't even. Yeah, we were watching Elf for Christmas, and I don't even remember what the moment was. It wasn't even particularly sad. There was just a moment where I was really tired, and it was almost Christmas, and I'm like, he's trying to bring back the Christmas spirit. That's so beautiful. And that's how I knew I needed to sleep. And I was so overtired that I slept for like the first 50 minutes of Elf, and then I woke up, and then I almost cried watching a Will Ferrell Christmas themed movie. So that's the most embarrassing thing I've done recently.
I was actually just talking to somebody at work today about Santa Claus, and she was saying that if she ever had a chance to raise another kid, she would not be. All right, so spoiler alert: if you're anything less than 12, plug your ears until I don't know, like for a minute.
Also, I'd be interested if anyone less than 12 was watching this.
Yeah,
seems like you're so young. Do other things. Actually, if you're under 15, you have better things to do than watch our content. Go outside. Or stay on your phone.
Listen to us outside.
Yeah, I'm not a boomer. I'm not trying to tell you that you need to that you just need to see the fresh air, but like you have a million better things to do than watch our content if you're young.
Although time outdoors has been associated with a decreasing need for glasses, so that you're less likely to be nearsighted if you spend more time outdoors. Just putting it out there.
Yeah.
But she was saying that when her kid finally realized that Santa was not real, her kid looked to her and said, "Hey, why did you lie to me so long?" And felt really betrayed for having been made to believe that somehow there was a Santa Claus and this was the weirdo that was breaking into their home to give them presents.
That's challenging. That's a challenging response to being taught about that. That's a little.
Yeah. So no, if we're talking about Christmas,
that cuts deep.
Yeah,
that would be hard.
But it's true though.
Yeah.
A little bit. I mean, Shawn McGuire, writer who I really like, who writes as Mira Grant for her horror, had this point on Twitter, and I think it's totally legit, that if you're a parent, if you're going to give presents, a really good strategy would be, if you're gonna have Santa Claus involved in your life, have Santa Claus give like little token things for the stockings. Presents should come from the parents, because the whole idea of Santa Claus being built up to be an arbiter of how good or bad you've been over the year, and that somehow if you're bad you don't get good stuff, and if you're good you get better stuff.
And if you're bad and you're rich, you get better stuff anyway.
So you see people at school, if you're not well to do, you see people at school talking about after Christmas about what they got and stuff, and let's say you know that they are awful people.
Yeah, when it's supposed to be a value judgment on how good of a person you are. I hadn't thought about it that way.
Right. So instead of thinking, oh, we don't have a lot of money, I appreciate what I've got, it's that I am a bad kid.
Yeah.
I want to say a bad word, but that other kid who's a bit of a dink is getting all this good stuff. What does that say about me? That's
true. It's I think the problem is it's a little challenging when that's the cultural mythos, to change that in just your household, and then to be the kid who shows up. I mean, I know it's not. From a mechanical level, that's, teaching your kid that it's separate from how good they are as a person is the smart thing to do. But it's a very like granola parent thing when they show up and they're like, Santa, is just giving me these. Well, obviously he wouldn't be making these presents because they're made in China and they're not fair trade or whatever. Santa gives me 3 squares of fair trade chocolate and it has nothing to do with the quality of me as a child.
Well, I guess Twitter's for old people. Facebook is for really old people. Twitter's for old people.
Twitter's for old people.
Isn't it? Because that's where I don't go on Instagram at all.
Yeah, Instagram is for the youngins, that's for sure. Snapchat is too. But I don't think Twitter's for old people. I think Twitter's for everybody. Twitter's like a free-for-all where all the people from the different platforms go when they have things to say.
So what I saw on Twitter was that there's people just reminiscing about, in that particular thread, people reminiscing about the kind of stuff that they got when they were kids and what they appreciated it. And that it didn't have to be something hugely valuable. One person said that they were so happy when they unwrapped this little plastic container that would dispense 1 Q-tip at a time.
Ooh. And
she found out, decades later when she was older, that was what you would get when you would send off the box top to Q-tip and they would mail it to you for free.
Ah.
But a lot of it really, I mean, the potential for Christmas to be a life-affirming kind of event is huge, and the way it's been sold and marketed and commercialized, I mean, it doesn't have to be an awful thing, but it really is. The way we sort of lean into the Santa Claus idea, and that there's some sort of I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for, where you somehow deserve the present that you get,
like judgment, arbitration,
something like that, where there's like, it's a merit-based system, right?
Yeah.
And it's a lie. And if you push that lie on your kid, I mean, you're not really, I don't know that they'll be severely damaged for the rest of their life, but you're not doing them any favors.
Yeah, you don't need to blow it out of proportion, but that doesn't mean it's not worth considering.
Right.
That's true.
Right. So maybe we've got a couple questions, and I feel bad that they're a couple weeks old, but I don't know that we can...
We can probably leave them for a future
Yeah, because it feels like... Because there's sort of potentially bigger kind of questions that I want to talk about. Like, there's a lot of stuff that they can lead into.
Yeah. All right, so there we go. So I guess we're... I mean, that's a good 40 minutes.
Yeah, I want to wish everybody a great new year. I hope 2020... is even better than 2019, no matter how good or bad 2019 was.
Yeah.
And
it's been a mixed bag.
It's been a bit of a mixed bag.
No year is all bad, but there's been...
Yeah, I hope that the worldwide rise in nationalism, fascism abates a little bit. That's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, it's been not great to see.
Yeah, a bit of a trash fire.
It's weird how people almost get brownie points now for being willing to openly say fascism is bad. Yeah. Like, I know that that's a thing that, like, basically everybody everybody thinks that everybody decent thinks.
Right.
But somebody will say, hey, fascism is bad. And I'll be like, oh, you're one of the good ones. And I'm like, why is that my bar now?
Yeah, it's pretty...
Why is that my criteria? I'm like, oh, that's cool. You're on my side, probably. And
I don't know why fascism has become like a discussion again. And
Right.
I know, like, it's not even a funny thing, really.
Right.
Like, people joke about it, and I'm like, oh, this is too horrific to be very entertaining at all. But it's unfortunate, and this might not be a new observation, but it very surprising.
Okay.
There we go.
And so we'll leave it at that. And I think
Fascism bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that makes us the good guys. So you want
It makes us the not fascists, which
Yes.
is a start. It's a little bit.
All right. So you have before we get to our official patron. I keep on saying patrons, but it's not. It's Patreon is the pay. It's patrons on Patreon.
Yeah, I have a new fake Patreon.
Well, a real life one.
A real life patron of me, not on Patreon, just in the world.
Just of you.
So this is a shout out to Eliza, the Glucose Guardian Caton. She's offered to be a patron, but I won't let her because one, she doesn't watch these videos and I don't need my friends seeing this content. And two, Patreon would take a cut and she can just deliver food directly to my mouth with no middleman. And this shout out has been brought to you by 2.5 vegetarian A&W chicken nuggets consumed at 3 a.m. after going to a Christmas market.
So were they good?
They were very good.
The
A&W vegetarian, they're not called chicken nuggets. They're, I don't remember, there's something nuggets.
Chickpea nuggets.
They might be like snack nuggets,
Okay.
whatever, but they're really good. And I was given a couple of them, and that feels like what for this week's shout out, whatever the portion of the like $5 a week tier or whatever. Anyway, she's paying her dues.
There you go.
There we go. And for the people who don't know me in real life, who are giving us money, who in many ways we appreciate the support of even more, we have Console Peasant, Edwin Felix, who are supporting us the highest last word tier. We have Shawn, Farrell, Daniel Simonson, Aaron Mall, and Michael DeVries, who are supporting us on the credited level, and Eddie G and Chris Wolf at the gratitude level. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks so much for your support. We'll see you next time.
Komoda.